Today, on the starting lineup with myself and DouglieDoWrong, we are going to discuss day 2 of Dolphins OTAs as it was much more eventful than day 1. We've got some observations as Waddle and Tua go off. We've got some more corner injuries. And Tyreek Hill, once again, showing some newly acquired self-awareness as he discussed the possibility that he's probably going to be relinquishing his team captaincy. We're going to talk about it all. Do me the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you are new, and let's get into this.
Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it!
You have got to be kidding me.
Jaylen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field down the near side, man open. Touchdown!
The run from Tua Tagovailoa.
Touchdown!
He's going deep. He's got it over the touchdown again.
Tagovailoa trying to pick up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boys, Reason and Douglie, and we are back here for another one. If you didn't have a chance, guys, I just want to plug it. Go show the Dive Bar some love. Go follow them and subscribe to them, all right? Go show them some love. Douglie's been on there. I was on there yesterday. Good, great shows. And, hey, I want to thank all y'all because I noticed all y'all make sure to show up when me and Douglie go up there. So I want to thank each and every one of you, all right? Knight says, someone stick a fork in Cam. Is he talking about, did you see that pastor was like talking how nice Cam Newton's legs were? And did you see that? Some pastor was on Cam Newton's podcast and kept talking about how pretty his legs were and stuff. And like Newton gets all like awkward and it's like, what are we, is he talking about, did Cam Ward get hurt today?
Yeah, I pulled the hammy. He said they said he's fine. He went back in.
Oh, because I saw the last 2 days he'd been throwing darts at Cam.
No, Cam Smith. It's Cam Smith.
Oh, well, we're talking about Cam Smith. I think it's talking about. Oh, well, yeah, we'll get into that. All right. Well, why you got to spoil the show, Knight? All right. Shout out to Peace. She donates 10 Finside the NFL memberships. Always supporting the Finside fam and growing it. By the way, if you are a Patreon or channel member, there is an update that went up about an hour ago, so make sure you go check it out. Talked about a few AFC North teams I'm hearing in on Ramsey and a few other things, so go check that out. But either way, Douglie OTAs are underway. Yesterday wasn't as eventful. We'll talk about the Ramsey tweet later on. That was really the only event. Man, kind of nice to feel like football is back a little bit, eh?
I was saying that in my video earlier today. Like, it's take everything from today and everything for the next 2 weeks, give or take, with a grain of salt, but it's nice. It's nice to hear, the play-by-plays. It's nice to see them out there. It's just, we're getting there. It's going to be that break.
Yeah.
You're going to have to entertain the people, but it's getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah, because what is it? That break comes right after, June 12th, after they finish mandatory minicamp?
Mandatory minicamps, yeah.
And they haven't even announced the start date of training camp yet. Usually it's like late July, right? Like July.
Yeah, normally training camp starts like the 20s of July, and I think they put the schedule out for that around June 20th. They did it June 20th last year, so. Okay,
hey, look at this guy. He remembers dates, eh? Okay, I like
got dates on dates.
All right, so let's start off. Let's get into the things today. So let's start off, I guess, with OTAs. And we'll recap it a little bit. I'll give you the floor because you've already done a video about it. What were some of your key takeaways? And we'll talk about Tyreek and everything and the Cam Smith stuff later on. But what were and we'll talk about Waddle's day. But what were some of the key takeaways you had from today?
Chubb. Bradley Chubb. Wish he didn't block me. Apparently. I'm gonna do everything in my power.
We're
to
gonna
get
have to start a
unblocked by that man.
campaign, dude. Like that's coming to it. We're
It's
gonna
all,
start a
I
campaign.
honestly think it's all from that Crosby tweet, and then he was like, "Screw this guy," and he blocked me. I'm like, "Come on, Chubb, I love you, man." He had a day. Him, Chop, Phillips. Phillips didn't do much, but from what we saw, he's very mobile, which I like. Tua doing Tua things again. It's OTAs, so like you give Tua a pocket and you just let him have fun. He's gonna drop dimes all over the field.
Mhm.
And then people who don't like Tua are gonna be like, "Ugh," and then the people who do like Tua are gonna be like, "Ah." It is what it is. But he throws an interception, which happened yesterday.
Wasn't that Zach? I thought that was Zach.
It was one of them because the dude's arm was white. Like, well, that's all we
I think
really
it was
saw.
Zach.
So,
I think it was Zach.
but of course, you said people are like, "Oh, look at that duck." Would a Tua throw that? No, the spiral of the ball. It was a righty buttholes. But yeah, today it was just nice. Like we were saying before, it was just nice to see some things. And it was nice to like get into the groove of things. Supposedly Jonah struggled a little bit, but then started getting into a groove, which I like. I want him to, feet and fire type situation. And he's going. Sealer wasn't there. Sealer, Janu, and one other person, as well as Ramsey, weren't there. But I want him to like go against Chubb and go against these guys and really work at it in the corners. We got Maitre went on IR. And now you got Cam dealing with a hammy.
Yeah. And dude, okay, so let's talk about this because the guy you mentioned that wasn't there was James Daniels, and the word on the street is Austin Jackson's further ahead than James Daniels right now.
Oh boy,
are you worried about his availability come training camp?
Now I am,
because I don't know if did you see Eichenberg botched a snap to Zach Wilson today? I don't know if you saw that.
No, I try to.
Wilson was kind of all over the place too. He was throwing, guys were having to adjust on balls behind them. Like Zach Wilson was a little all over the place today too. So I don't know. And Chubb, I love Chubb, Ryan Hayes ever going to be anything? Like what are we doing? What are we doing here, Like did we take him in the 7th?
Yes. It was like 2 years ago we took him in the 7th when we had
drafting
no
a camp body,
second.
bro. You gotta love it, Like drafting a camp body.
And he got destroyed multiple times by Bradley Chubb, who looks lean. That man is just lean as hell. Like he's on a mission to shut me up.
Let me ask you this though. Okay, what do you make of the Jonu and the Sealer thing? Do you think it's not about an extension and they're just vets don't like doing this type of this part of the year? They're obviously going to be there mandatory minicamp.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this? Because I think we're both proponents. We're both in the club of pay Brooks and pay Sealer because they're going to be here long. And if the money makes sense, you might as well lock up Jonu if Tyreek's out the door next year, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it's like you said, it's OTAs. It's it's not like the whole Tua situation where everyone was worrying about Tua this, Tua that.
Yeah.
That's also probably another reason why you have some really big names out there in free agency still haven't signed, because they're like, I don't want to do anything until training camp.
Yeah.
But I think with Johnny, I think it's just a rest type thing. I think he's just like, if I don't, hey coach, do I need to be there? Because if I don't, I'm not. Sealer, I think it could be like a 50-50 where he knows he deserves a contract extension, but also on the other hand, he's like, do I need to be there right now? So
yeah.
It could be I would say more like a 30-70, where it's like 30 is like he wants a new contract, and 70 he's like,
yeah,
I don't need to be there.
Man, how exciting was it to see Kenny and Jordan hit those sleds too, Man. That's kind of why I just want Sealer there. I just want him and Grant to get in a groove. That's where I'm at. Shout out to 99. He joined the Pro Bowl. Shout out to Patrick. He said, Reason, can you please drop a heads up about an hour before you go on WQAM? I'll be there at 9 a.m. Okay? They just hit me up like 12 minutes, 15 minutes before we went live here, and it looks like I'll be on there around 9 a.m. All right? So I guess lock in for that. All right? 9 a.m.
That's going to be awesome. I think they'll have it recorded too, so if you miss it, you'll be able to hear it afterwards.
Like, I wish my first time going up there was just strictly talking Dolphins football. Like, you know what I'm saying? But at the same point, hey, they've gone up there and talked about other people and haven't afforded them this chance, so I appreciate that, and I've made it known to them that I appreciate that. Dude, I wanted to ask you something. Speaking of OTAs, day 2. Yo, Doug, Tell me, okay, two-part question. Did you see the Cleveland Browns quarterback stat tracker? And two, didn't it flash you back to when our media was doing it for Tua and the quarterback rooms? You remember? I was like, oh, here we go. I'm like, we're not the only fan base that's this lunatic. You know what I mean? Did you see that? I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I gotta find. Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
they put it out, dumb as hell, right? Flacco 9 for 14, a touchdown. Sanders 7 for 9, 3 touchdowns. Pickett 9 for 6, no touchdowns. And then Gabriel's the only one who threw an interception, went 11 for 16, 2 touchdowns. I put a GIF. I was like, we're tracking OTAs, and the GIF says, "What the f are we doing here?"
Bro,
like,
the pads aren't even on, bro, and we're tracking.
Like, seriously, this is like flag football. But not even, because you can still bump somebody in flag football. You ain't touching no one today. Oh my God.
Dude, when I saw this, I was like, oh my God, we're not the only ones that are out of our minds.
And
you know what I mean?
Shador. Oh my God. Look, Shador had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Was Myles Garrett there? And was he rushing at you? No, then shut up. I don't care.
That's hilarious. The orange jersey today was out to Storm Duck. Right?
Nice to see.
That is nice to see. Jesus
we
Christ.
need anything from that second day. And then Ethan Bonner was yesterday with Jalen Phillips, which was, again, back-to-back corners, which is, I guess, nice to see.
And Tajay Washington, he was in a red non-contact, but at least he was out there too today, right?
Yeah, him and we'll get to it, but Reek was out there as well. Not doing 11 on 11s, but he was working a little bit, which was nice.
Yeah, and apparently, Madison had a really nice run today too.
Mm-hmm.
That Willie Gay kind of got the
dude. That video yesterday. I don't know if you watched my video yesterday of them running out of the tunnel, not the tunnel, but they were running out to practice, and Willie Gay scream.
Bro, I'm excited for him, man. I'm excited for this guy, bro.
So high pitched. He was like,
yo. Flanders, it was in remember Flanders? Have you ever seen the Simpsons episode when Flanders screams for the first time? Ah! And they think it's a woman and stuff. Oh man, apparently Ollie Gordon looked pretty good too today. So and Jaylen Wright got stripped by Elijah Campbell.
Yeah.
So, man, I think he's gonna have a really good year too. Nick Westbrook.
I'm warming up to the safeties. At first, I was iffy about the safeties, but I'm warming up to them a little bit. So, for me now, it's just the corners.
Yeah, because even remember, like Patrick Morris, I think we all liked what we saw preseason from Jordan Colbert too, right? And we can see if he takes a step. You know what I mean? So, yeah, but yeah, apparently Jaylen Wright was like wide open for a touchdown on a wheel route too. And the blocking was really good, but Tua held the ball a little too long on it. So
cut him.
Yeah, I know, Man, do you remember Patrick Mahomes' rookie year? That 1 week where he threw like
5 interceptions?
Yeah,
or like
and people were like, "Yo, this guy's gonna be trash. Like this guy's gonna be the worst ever." And
then Tua had that rain practice, and he threw like 4, and everyone was like, "No, he sucks."
Yeah, it's like a tropical storm out there, and everyone's like, "No, it's gotta be tight spirals on the money. Placement's gotta be perfect." So let's talk about Tyreek Hill here. And shout out to Knight. He said Jonah versus Kenneth Grant happened. Oh, that brother. We'll talk about that when the pads are on. When the pads are on, we will talk about that. You know what I mean? But guys are playing patty cake with no pads on right now.
Yeah.
So, Tyreek Hill, he basically was asked if he was expected to remain a captain, and he said, and I quote, "I've got to prove myself. OTAs, training camp, I've got to show up differently. The mindset's got to be different. I don't feel like I deserve it, and if I didn't get it, I wouldn't dwell on it. I wouldn't sweat it." You know what I'm saying? Because I put myself in that position. I've been pretty vocal since the end of the season, Doug, that there is no way players in that locker room should be voting this guy a team captain. Then we saw that photo from the F1 with like Sealer, right? Chubb, Tua, Patrick Paul, and who was the other one? There was one more. There's one more in that group. Anyways, who was it? There's one more in that group with Patrick, Mike McDaniel. But yeah, was it Brooks? Was it Jordan
It
Brooks?
might have been Brooks.
Yeah. Anyways, the point of the matter is, for the first time in how many
Brewer.
years?
Did you say Brewer?
No, I didn't say Brewer.
It was Brewer.
It was Brewer.
Mhm.
So for the first time in how many years since the F1's been here and Tyreek's been here, the first time in his stint, he hasn't actually been in the photo op. What were your thoughts on him basically showing a little bit of self-awareness about potentially not deserving being a captain this season?
It was nice. It was nice to hear. It was different. He goes on the Aiden Ross thing, and he when he's away from the team, it's just like, what are you doing? Distraction, distraction. But then he came and he said the right things, and it was nice to hear him own up to it and like realize like I kind of messed up. Like I think he talked about it a few times where he talked about the end of last year and how he has to earn the respect and like earn their trust and everything. Because it was a big thing. Like you heard it, the damning thing, and the thing that I just keep replaying in my head is Waddle asking him, "Are you done?"
Yeah.
Because for a fact that bothered Waddle. Like him saying to him, "Reek, you done?" And then that's all we heard. But it's like, like as a player, when you ask somebody that, it's not like oh, you're done. Like, are you done? Like he was like, "You done?" Like seriously, like
Yeah.
So like that, like it like sticks in my head. But for him to come out and like essentially be like, I need to make up for this, it was a good first step. But he needs to stop messing with the fans because he does it way too much.
Well, let me ask you this. What did you think about that clip from his Twitch where once again it seems his focus is 2,000 yards and not team success? Did that kind of bug you?
If it can produce what happened in 2023, fine. Like at this point, if him trying to get 2,000 is him going to try harder and want the ball more and us to have again a top 5 offense in the NFL, I'm for it. Set high goals for yourself and go after them. But don't bitch and complain if you don't get the ball, because he might not be the top of the totem pole anymore with Waddle's resurgence, with Jonnu Smith. It took how many weeks for McDaniel to incorporate Jonnu, and then once he did, he was like, oh, I can just throw screens at this dude. He's a yak machine. So it's like you just need, and now you added the running backs and everything. He's gonna have to want it, but be the realization you might not get it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I as much as he's saying like he's got to prove it and prove it, like even with the fan base, dude, like it's crazy because he sometimes he says the right things and you kind of look at him and you're like, man, do I even believe you? Like, it's really one of those things where actions are going to speak louder than words for this guy this year, right? Especially if the going gets tough, like if we become, let's say we're 6-2 and we head into that really tough 3-game stretch before the bye week and things don't go our way. You know what I mean? Like, how's he gonna react? Like it's just, I don't know, man. It's just such a ticking time bomb. Like it just has to be. You should put like a Fragilia sticker on this guy because it's got the whole situation's got to be handled with care, and it's just it still boggles my mind that we've gotten to this point, and all it took was one bad year.
Yeah,
like. All it took was one downside, and things are just off the rails. Him and Tua don't have a great relationship. Him and Waddle don't have a great relationship. Obviously, him and McDaniel, there's, and I mean, you heard it. You saw it last year. It started to become a little bit of the norm last year, of McDaniel and Tua specifically calling him out and singling him out in terms of didn't run the right route. It wasn't in the right spot when he was supposed to be, blah 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 blah. Like, they were basically throwing him under the bus for like basic fundamental stuff, right? Like, and I think that's something we got to be listening for too in games that don't go our way. If again we start hearing that narrative again, things haven't overly changed behind the scenes with Tyreek. Personally, I think he has no business wearing the C.
When we were in games against playoff teams or winning teams or whatever criteria you want to put it in, that everyone puts that stigma on Tua, people forget like Tyreek disappears. Specifically that game against the Chiefs in the playoffs, He was getting whipped to the ground. Like he disappeared except for that one long touchdown that he got it, right? It was an
Yeah.
underthrow. He took it. He did his thing. Give him credit for that. But like certain games, he just like the Eagles game where he, disappears, the
That
Chiefs
key
game
drop in the back of the end
overseas.
zone. That key drop.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
Chiefs game overseas,
He
fumbles
lost
the
us the Chiefs
ball.
game.
Yeah.
And he had the drop at the 30 that we got no points on. I'm not even including the Waddle drop at the 26 where we got no points.
Mm-hmm.
Tyreek, if you do the math, that drop and then that fumble return to the touchdown, if you add up the points, he cost us a 13 to 21 point swing in the Chiefs' favor just on those two plays, bro. He cost us that game.
The Ravens game, we're going tit for tat, drops the touchdown, kind of everything falters after
Yeah.
that. So like, yeah, Tua needs to step it up against these teams as well, but Tyreek needs to help a little bit more.
Because he was brought in because he'd won in those big games.
Mm-hmm.
And even the Cowboys game, I always say, thank God for Waddle on the next play.
Yeah.
Right? Like, thank God he showed up and his hands arrived at the arena.
Thank God Shannon Sharp broke that film down because everyone wanted to blame Tua for missing the throw. And Shannon Sharp was like, nope, he was supposed to be outside the number. He went back in, should have been outside the number. And that's not the only time in 2023. Remember, I think it was the Chargers game, something he got mad. He was like, why would you throw it there? And then he watched the film and he came back. He's like, my bad. Yeah, you were right.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Yeah, the one that you're talking about, the one over the middle that might have got lost in the lights where he lost track of it. You're talking about that one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then he ends up catching it, but he like yelled at Tua, like, you can't be throwing those. You'll get me hurt or something like that. And then Tua was like, you went the wrong way. And he's like, no, I didn't. And then he watched the film and he was like, oh, no, I went the wrong way.
Let me ask you this. All right. You mentioned the Kansas City game. Okay. You remember the highlights of him being put on his butt. All right.
Yeah.
Did you hear what he said today that he's down to 183?
Yeah.
Are you that's concerning, dude.
Yeah.
I weighed that much.
Because you're going to get jammed, man.
You know,
that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. You go
That's what they did in 2024.
6'6" guy with a little muscle on him. He's going to be putting you on the ground, if he gets hands on you, right?
Because that's what, if our offensive line is struggling like it did last year, that's what they're going to do. They're just going to jam at the line of scrimmage and hope the pass rushers get there, and then I get off those jams.
Yep. You two way better than a certain Tua hater show or hatter. No hater. All right. Appreciate you. I don't know who you're talking about, but thank you for appreciating us, bro. We appreciate you appreciating us. Yeah, look at 10-17. Man, he makes a great point. Snead dropped him when he was almost 200 pounds, and he was at 200 pounds.
Yep.
Man. Taking the definition of light work a little too seriously. Hey, I wanted to ask you this. Who are a couple players you're keeping an eye on at training camp? I know a lot of fans are hyping up, shout out to Sacconi's sleepers. A lot of people are shutting out Isaiah Johnson, right? He had the pick yesterday that we were talking about. Ethan Bonner. I think a lot of people want to see him get a better chance than he got last year. Besides the rookies, because I think those are the obvious, who are a couple like depth guys you are keeping an eye on?
I really, they were really high on Keon Smith. So I think I'm going to focus on him and see what about him do they like so much, because they kept talking about Keon Smith. Greer came out and he was like, oh, when Keon Smith got injured, this and that. So Keon Smith, some depth at the offensive line. I want to see if Liam Eichenberg can change. I doubt it. So I'm not going to have high expectations. And that defensive line, I want to see if we have somebody that we could pair, with the guys we have. And I want to see the veteran leadership.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a name that I'm really going to be focusing on. But I also want to see the veteran leadership of like Willie Gay and then Melifanu, Ashton Davis, all those guys. I want to see what they can do, especially because our secondary is just so depleted of names, essentially, that I want to see what they can do.
I think another one I really want to see what is Grayson Murphy. Now that he's healthy, he was such a pressure magnet when he was at UCLA. I really want to see what he does. And I think, I'll go UDFA. I know Julian Hill had a nice block today and Tanner Connor made a play, but I want to see what Jalen Connors does. BJ Adams. And I agree with you. Like in that, that secondary, another name I think is Patrick Moore going to take another step this offseason, right? Is he going to look a little like, I think he surprised a lot of us. A lot of us were excited about him in year one. Yeah. So I think there's, and then obviously the depth at linebacker is very interesting, right? I know Willie Gay got burned a little bit today. But that like KJ Britt and such, and then Austin Jackson, are you going to stay healthy? And I think all of us need to keep an eye on when James Daniels returns. So
I'm hoping he's good for camp. Like if
yeah.
they're just letting him do his thing now, and then when camp starts, he's good to go. I also want to see if McDaniels goes back to his letting the vets rest all the time type situation, because that doesn't bode well for them and the longevity of it.
Yeah, for sure. Let's also man, did I not? Huh. Okay. I didn't cover it. Let's put it under this section then, I guess. I thought I made its own, but I guess I didn't. All right, Jaylen Waddle. We'll talk about this, all right? Jaylen Waddle had a big day today with Tua Tagovailoa. On one play, Cam Smith got absolutely torched on a 60-yard touchdown pass. Then Cam Smith came up limping and grabbing his quad. He left and then he returned. This is a guy who's battled injuries. The pressure was on him. Greer called him out specifically to perform, Doug. So what do you think? Like I said this. Okay, Waddle and Tua connecting. That's great. First of all, it's the Underwear Olympics. Second of all, look at that secondary. They should be performing. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Well, like, let's be real here. Now if Ramsey and X are out there, even though it's the Underwear Olympics, I think we could be a little bit more excited about this. But what are your thoughts on the Waddle and Tua day? Because that was something a lot of people who were there were talking about. And then Cam Smith injured again, Doug?
So first off, they're always going to have that connection. We saw it in 2023 when Tyreek Hill didn't play versus the Jets, and the two of that's why I'm not so worried about when we move on from Tyreek Hill. I think Waddle's going to be the number one guy, and that's just something that, look at his rookie year with Waddle, and I don't think the drop off is going to be that huge to go from Tyreek to Waddle. Now, obviously, Tyreek is future Hall of Famer and generational talent, but a lot of people are, crapping on Waddle because we should have took Benet Sewell, but it is what it is. He's still a really good player, and he's still going to be very contributing. Cam Smith's situation, Nick Hicks said something interesting on Twitter that he should be training in the off season, and it seems like if what he's saying is true, which I wouldn't say he's lying, that's probably why he keeps getting these types of injuries. Is you see guys like Tyreek Hill, like Jaylen Waddle, all of these guys that find a field and they're practicing and running routes and doing their thing. If it is true that Cam Smith is not doing as much when he has those times, or even this month before training camp, that's probably why he gets these deep tissue injuries, is because he does something, end of the season, does nothing, and then comes in and he's cold. And that's when you get these hammies and these quads and all these injuries, is because you're not warming up and going into these situations. So if what Nick Hicks is saying is true, that's a problem. And that means that's a dedication problem.
Yeah.
And, supposedly that's the thing that why he went to the second round and was a first round talent. So we'll see.
And I mean, Fangio looks more right by the day with this guy, exactly. I mean, I talked about it back in the day. There was a reason why he was the last rookie to sign his deal, out of that draft class, right? The mysterious maturity issues, rumblings of Puffin the Magic Dragon, all that kind of stuff going on, right? Falling asleep. He was the guy that was falling asleep in the meetings, right? Living that Miami life a little too much. You nailed it. Yeah. First round talent. UDFA, he doesn't even have a UDFA work ethic, because UDFAs come out there and they want to make the roster. That's the problem. This is coming down to the player and not his talent. This is coming down to the player himself. And it sucks. It really does, because Greer had the most intel a GM could possibly have due to his connection through his son to that room. I'm sure no GM in the NFL is more in with the South Carolina coaches at that point. And clearly someone didn't give him the heads up that this guy F's the dog. You know what I mean? Like,
I think that's why he said what he said with, we're not holding his hand. You know, he needs to show. I don't, if this stays like this, he doesn't make the roster.
Well, dude,
plain simple.
2 on-field practices in 2 days, and Jason Maitre and Cam Smith. We've lost our weakest unit.
I said something about it on Twitter, and I got the usual, why are you freaking out so much? Stop freaking out. Relax. And I hate, when you're right and you don't want to be right. These are the situations where I'm always like end up being right. Last year I was worried about the offensive line. Everyone kept telling me, you're worried about it. It's this day, it's that day, yada yada. Offensive line ended up being a problem. This year I'm not as worried about the offensive line as I am the secondary. The corners scare the crap out of me, and I'm hoping I'm wrong. I don't want to be right in this one, but I do not. I know what Weaver's trying to do, and I know he's trying to have the pass rush dictate the secondary, which cool, but it's a big leap going from the 27th to hopefully a top 10. It just the secondary worries me, and I'm afraid of bad beats, and I'm afraid of quick screens and quick outs and stuff to combat the pass rush. And we got to face some good receivers, especially DK Metcalf and all these guys. So the secondary worries the crap out of me.
Yeah, and Ryder says I'd keep BJ Adams over Cam Smith.
Yeah.
Eric says 33rd ranked secondary. There's only 30. I get your.
It's that bad.
That's absolutely hilarious. That's. Oh man. All right. So I wanted to get your thoughts on Ramsey's cryptic tweet yesterday. He tweeted out the 5, and then what came out was today he kind of tweeted out again. I don't want to say he kind of walked it back, but he kind of tried to imply, he said the false narrative's either lame or funny. Don't let it faze you. Wish well and blessings among them always. Now, I don't know if he's exactly saying, talking about 5, but I know you've heard the chatter, and even I've had to push back on it. A lot of people are in our fan base are saying he didn't want to win here. And, they're just trying to make him look out to be like some guy that was just here for the paycheck, didn't want to win, didn't work hard enough. And I'm like, yo, guys, like this guy was returning from injuries early. He didn't cause us any problems off field like Tyreek does. He was pretty much a good soldier. And then when you hear the story, basically what happened was McDaniel had a group of guys that he would dictate what he wanted their units to do. And Ramsey was the head of the defense, and basically McDaniel took away that power from everyone, and then he started calling Ramsey out directly in front of the team in team meetings, trying to pass off the, hey, if I'll call out him, I'll call out any of you, when really it backfired. So it's a lot deeper than, oh, I just don't want to be here. And plus he's 31 with no guaranteed money beyond here. What are your thoughts on his 5 tweet? Because I don't care what anyone tries to tell me, he's clearly talking about June 1st.
Exactly.
And like, what are your thoughts on this whole situation right now as we get closer?
It became messy. It became incredibly messy, and it's what happens when you try to shift your philosophy in McDaniel and being a player's coach, and because you have guys that are player coaches that people don't realize are player. Andy Reid is a player's coach. There's no way on God's green earth in the Super Bowl you're going to have, Travis Kelce push you in the chest and not be a player's coach. He's a player's coach. Tomlin, even though he comes off very hard, is a player's coach. Harbaugh, these guys are players' coaches, but they also know how to ride that line. McDaniel was way too far to the one side. He tried to come back towards the middle, and then he kind of overshot it a little bit with some people, and they're like, look, it's just not going to work. And to say that Ramsey, doesn't want to be here for X, Y, or Z, he specifically wanted to get traded to Miami. That's where he wanted to go because he saw what we were building. He saw what what was the second game? He had the 2 interceptions. Like he came in and he did what he needed to do. But you kind of look at it, and like you said, he's 31. How much longer is he going to be playing? He sees the writing on the wall. We all see the writing on the wall. As a true Dolphin fan, one that's unbiased and doesn't drink the hopium, we're not winning a Super Bowl in the next 5 years. I'm not saying it's impossible. Obviously, anything could happen, and the planets could align, and we can go on a run in the playoffs like the 2008 Giants, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not winning a Super Bowl in the next 5 years. Rams, that's what Xavier Howard should have done like 3-4 years ago. Been like, look, I'm out. I don't see anything happening. Like once 2019 hit, he should have been like, you need to trade me as well as Tunsil and all these guys. So I don't blame Ramsey.
Yeah.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him for the turmoil that's going inside of the building, because you have McDaniel coming out addressing it because it's a problem. So if McDaniel's addressing it and Ramsey's addressing it, why is Ramsey getting flack for being like, I'm too old for this. I don't need this right now. So, and he's not like holding anyone hostage or anything. He is coming out and saying, I'm out. I'm not going to go in there. I'm not going to take away from these rookies. I'm not going to cause distraction. I'm just out. It is what it is. And he threw the 5 up, which now, again, people are going to get bothered by, but he wants to play football. So right now he's not playing football. So he's counting down the days till he's out, and he's going to go play football. Is what it is.
You think it happens before mandatory minicamp?
I think it already is in place, and I think that's why he's counting it down. I could be wrong. This is just me assuming, but I think that they have something in place, whether it's the Rams or, we heard the rumors of getting a house in Dallas and stuff, whether it is one of those teams. I think there's something in place, because obviously enough teams have contacted the Dolphins that they're like, all right, once, Monday hits, the 2nd of June, we'll send them your way, which is good because content for us.
I know, but I know everyone but we want it to happen after minicamp, so that stretch isn't that. You know what I mean? Like that'd be the perfect time. So we got a little bit of, but honestly, like as the more I've thought about it, you know what I mean? Like you mentioned the Cowboys, man, if they could swing something that lands us DaRon Bland coming back, Trevon Diggs, he got shut down last year with an injury to the same knee with that torn ACL from the year before. DaRon Bland came back for the second half of last season, and let's be honest, DaRon Bland's younger, and ball production wise, he looks like he's on a higher trajectory. Man, if I would be down. I don't think Dallas is real because they need to pay Micah, and you know what I mean? Like I don't, and then the whole Dak thing, right, going on right now. I don't know what's going to happen over there. And they just traded Pickens, and they haven't signed Pickens. And what if Pickens pops off? They're going to want to pay him next to CD. So I don't know. Ramsey would be like a mercenary, I would feel, right? I think the Rams are going to be the most aggressive, when that clock strikes 12 a.m. midnight on June 1st and he can move. I think, if a deal's in place, I think it's probably going to be with the Rams. That's just, my personal.
Imagine they pull off a trade that we get Parsons.
Oh, bro, I'll do backwards, Holy jeez.
We send him a second Ramsey for Parsons or something like that.
Listen, people are going to call me crazy. I'd send Ramsey in a first for Parsons. That guy would change our defense, and we wouldn't even. If you added Micah Parsons, would we be as worried about the secondary? Because we're like, yo, these guys are going to get home in like a second and a half. Like, it's going to be over.
Because he can play middle linebacker. He's not just on the outside type of guy.
Yeah, he's a stud, man. Chris says Dolphins been building for the future for 25 years.
Yep.
Okay. I wanted to talk about this because Mike Florio came out with an article last night. I don't know if you saw it. He came out with an article. It was around 8:30 last night. And he said, it's called, in 2025, the pressure will be on Tua Tagovailoa. So I'm going to read a portion of it to you here. I want to get your thoughts on this. So he says, on one level, there's no pressure on Tua Tagovailoa. He's won via a second contract that fully guaranteed $93.71 million at signing, and that saw another $54 million in 2026 injury guarantees convert to full guarantees early this year. That's $147.71 million that Tua will definitely make through 2026. But here's a question: will he make it to 2026? They have to pay him, but they don't have to keep him. And if the 2025 season goes poorly, the Dolphins quite possibly won't be keeping coach Mike McDaniel. Given the tendencies of teams that fire a head coach to hire a replacement who is the exact opposite from a personality standpoint, the next coach could be far closer to Brian Flores than McDaniel on the overall continuum of hard-ass nice guy. And the new coach will arrive believing that Tua is the problem, not the solution. And even if the coach decides to keep Tua around for 2026, he'll clearly be in an up or out season, given that 2026, only $3 million of his 2027 pay will be fully guaranteed. Basically, this is the year for Tua to secure his short and long-term future in Miami. If 2025 goes sideways, he may not have either, even if he ends up with a parting gift of $54 million. So I actually didn't mean to do this. And then right before we went live, I'm like, oh my God. I said McDaniel and Tua's future are tied at the hip. I mean, you know, the irony
I might
of that
bite
one.
off you and make a video about this tomorrow. You never know.
No, I'm talking about the whole, you know, is that a poor joke? Me talking about Tua's hip? I don't know. You know,
yeah, I completely forgot about that hip injury.
I don't know. That's in poor taste. But how do you see this? Do you see that? Yeah, they are tied to the hip. And let me ask you this: do you think Greer should be included in that because this is his third head coach?
I don't know how much I can get into the whole Greer situation. Me and you talk about the Greer situation privately, so we kind of know a certain. But I'm not gonna, devolve that because it can. I don't. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. Greer should have been gone 2021. When Flores was fired, he should have been fired. That's, his second head coach, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. 100% these guys are tied at the hip. You brought in McDaniel to work with Tua. Now, McDaniel, no offense to you, but you're dumb for doing that. And I think that's how they got McDaniel, because I think no other veteran head coach or no other, seasoned head coach wanted to come to Miami. And I talked about that in 2022 when I was upset that the stipulation to come to Miami was you need to keep Poyer and you need to work with Tua. You just took your casting net for head coaches and you made it real tiny, and you caught one guy who's, don't get me wrong, McDaniel's not a bad head coach. He needs to work on some things, but you got McDaniel. But there's your thing though. You are now tied to Tua Tagovailoa, and if 2025 doesn't work out, if McDaniels is gone, McDaniel who is gone. Like, there's no way, as Stephen Ross, you sent out this BS letter. Status quo isn't good enough. Play on the field isn't good enough, but you kept status quo. You can't do it again, right? You have to clean house. You have to get rid of Greer. You have to get rid of McDaniel. And, Tua will still be on the team because if they do trade him, it'll be a post June 1st type situation. But the new head coach is not. That's how the NFL works. Your head coach is tied to your quarterback. That's why everyone who thinks that Brian Flores, didn't want to draft Tua, you don't know what you're talking about. Because if Brian Flores didn't want to draft Tua, they would not have drafted Tua, right? He wasn't there banging the table. Tua's my guy. I need Tua. It was a talking situation. It was a vote, and he said, "Yeah, I could work with Tua," and he got Tua. We all know what he actually wanted to do was get Wirfs and then get Jordan Love, which in hindsight we all would have loved that. But the head coach is always attached to the quarterback. So this new head coach who's coming in, who, is probably going to be a defensive coach, Weaver, possibly, is going to want his quarterback. And 2026's draft class is a nice draft class to go out and get yourself your quarterback. So, and we have 2/3, possibly, more on top of that with Ramsey and all that situation. So, yeah, if they are tied at the hip, and if one goes, they're both going to go.
Bro, I'm telling you, if Tua goes down, I want Lenore Sellers or Garrett Nussmeier. Come on, baby. I'm going to be pushing it, especially if Lenore takes that next step at South Carolina this year. All day, baby. I want Lenore and what's crazy? I know you mentioned the, Flores and the Love and the Wirfs. Now, I think Wirfs would have been in year one a home run. The problem is under Flores, I think Love would have been sent to the Wolves way too early. And I think I don't even think Love would be here right now. I think we probably would have drafted another quarterback after they moved off of Flores because I think he would have ruined Love, right? Like you saw, the Green Bay is, can we call them a quarterback, a factory, right? Because they know how to properly develop them and stuff. What did they do? They waited 2 years, which is what you remember back in the day, it was Tua or Love for me because I knew we couldn't have a shot at Burrow. Yes. And what did I say about Love? You need to bench this guy for 2 years. There's no way. And I don't think, bro, we would have drafted him in the 26. We were one of the most quarterback-hungry franchises at the time. and there's still parts of the fan base that are, but you get what I'm saying. And look at Flores, you remember it? Flores didn't think Tua was ready, but Ross and Greer called him in the office and said, yeah, don't even let Chan know we're having this conversation. Don't even tell your coordinator. We're not bringing him in. Yeah, just looking over the jersey sales and the tweets and stuff, you better start this kid, right? And I think Flores was, you know what I think Flores' stance was? Buddy, if I get Tua pre-injury, I'm good.
Yeah.
If Tua, and then you remember, right? I know you remember it. When Tua showed up for training camp, a lot of people on the staff and in the media were like, yeah, this doesn't look like the same guy. That hip injury didn't work. And again, why, right? Dude, while Burrow and Herbert, right? Herbert had never taken a snap under center, but he spent all offseason developing his footwork. These guys were taking in playbooks. Tua was just working to be able to go on the field. Right? They were working. Yeah, exactly. These guys were working to be NFL starters in year one. He was trying to rehab just so he could be available in year one. Right? Like, big difference. Right? Tua was behind the 8 ball coming out because of that hip injury.
100%. And I talk about that ad nauseum because everyone says we should have took Herbert. People forget. And this is a Miami Dolphins thing. It's not even a Flores thing or anything. We don't know how to nurture and grow quarterbacks. It just is what it is. With Chad Henne, with Ryan Tannehill. Like, you can raffle off the list of, we get a quarterback and okay, build around this quarterback. This is now your franchise quarterback. And we don't know how to do it. Right? Oh, we'll focus on offensive line. Tannehill has no weapons, or, and then we did the reverse for Tua. It's like, we got you all these shiny weapons, but no offensive line for a kid who's coming off a major hip injury. Yeah. And then so it doesn't matter. We bring Jordan Love in or Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert or Jalen Hurts. I don't think they would have been as successful as they are in their other teams because the other teams have a GM who know what to do. Yeah. But to get piggyback off of what you said about them coming in, 2020 was a COVID year, right? So there was not a lot to do. And you had the Cincinnati Bengals hit up Joe Burrow. What do you run in LSU? What are you good at? All right, we're going to incorporate that into the playbook. Yeah. Herbert, what do you run at Oregon? Yep. Oh, you like that? We're going to incorporate that into the playbook. Hey, Tua, you're going to learn Fitzpatrick's playbook, and I don't care what you have to say.
ISO under Gailey. You've never ran it before, but enjoy.
It's a completely different thing. And then all of a sudden, when Mike McDaniel came in, he was like, I'm going to do to his strengths. Yeah. I'm not going to do his weaknesses. And that's now a stigma. It's like, come on, that's what you do with your quarterback. Look at Josh Allen. Josh Allen was sucking. And then they got rid of him, the offense coordinator. They brought Joe Brady in, and Brady went back, go back to what you were doing, man. And he thrived. Yeah. But it makes me laugh. So in hindsight, though, like you said, he was coming off the hip injury. Me and you both were like, sit him in 2020. I don't want to see him on the field. And of course, the first game he comes back is against freaking Aaron Donald and the Rams. Like, are you kidding me right now? But sit him and then have him learn. Have him learn from Fitzpatrick, who's a great guy to learn from. Like, that's where he should have just learned and sat and learned. And we might have had a different Tua. Like, honestly. And, everyone gets on him about saying, like, he didn't know the playbook fully, even though Tom Brady says there's like a laundry list of things. And I'm sounding like a 2-in-ear right now. But it's just, the whole situation was just horrible. And I don't blame Flores for it. I honestly don't. That's one of the situations I don't blame Flores for. But I do think he jumped the gun in his characteristic of Tua. I think he should have gave a little bit more time than seeing, what he was thrusted into. But hindsight's always 2020,
And really, people got to realize, like, the way Flores handled people, that wasn't even just a Tua thing. Him and X, I know X has said really good things about him recently, but him and X did not like each other when they were there, okay? Jalen Phillips had to go see a sports psychologist because they drove his confidence into the ground because he'd talk about it. I would come off the field and if I didn't do anything, they wouldn't even ignore me. They wouldn't even acknowledge me. And then when I would do something, I'd come off the field, I wouldn't even get a pat on the back. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't even just a Tua thing. It was just remember when I had Nick Hicks on here a couple years ago? What did he say? Remember when Albert Wilson returned from injury? And Albert Wilson got picked up by some media outlets. Albert Wilson would walk down the hallway. Everyone got their head down and no one's talking to each other. And he's like, what? I've never been in this type of environment in my whole life. Like, what is happening here? You know what I mean? So, but yeah, that situation was just
Elpad said Mika straight up left. Yeah, that's like the big beacon right there is Minka Fitzpatrick's situation.
Yeah.
Who and is going to be a fantastic safety and possibly a Hall of Famer. We had him.
Yeah.
But Flores was like, no.
Okay.
And then
have you heard what happened though? So apparently him and X's baby mama were getting way too close and a fight broke out in the locker room. And I've always given Flores the props for this.
Yeah.
Flores fell on the sword and Minka and X couldn't make it work. And Minka was like, yo, I don't want to play with this guy. I want out. Because basically X went up to him and said, yo, man, stop texting my baby mama. And he looked at him and said, yo, what the F are you going to do about it? And popped off. And then they used that's why people were so pissed off at Minka, because he went to Steelers and he started moving around like that was the excuse, right? He wouldn't move around for us. But that was because there was an actual situation in the locker room. So I've always given Flores his props for that. He handled like that a pro. He fell on the sword for Minka. But that was, baby mama drama in the locker room is what that was.
Interesting.
So, yeah. And I know someone who's close to the situation there. That's how I know that. Yeah, like, it's kind of crazy. So, yeah. I just wanted to ask you this. 1017 man had a good question. If we sweep the Bills but miss the playoffs, will you keep the coach?
No, I'd be I'd be happy. Don't get me wrong. I'd be stoked, but no, because these are all like consolation prizes, right? Like Tua leading the league in passing and leading the league in passer rating and completion percentage. These are all nice, right? It's like Justin Herbert's rookie numbers. Everyone wants to, put that plaque on the wall and say, well, look, Justin Herbert did this. At the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything if you're not winning. So, I would love it, especially if we end, like say we ended the season at 7-10, but we swept the Bills. Oh my God. I would love it. And I would just rub it in their face. You got swept by us? Like, you guys suck. Dude. Like, I would love it. Absolutely.
I'm going to be honest with you. If we're going to miss the playoffs, win 1 or 2 games, bro. Like, start Quinn Ewers or Zach Wilson and ride it out, dude. Like, that's another question. I got a good one for you. Tua goes down, but Quinn Ewers steps up and leads us to a 9-7 winning record. And we missed the playoffs by 1 game, but it was Tua's injury. But Quinn Ewers showed a lot in year 1 and takes us to a 9-7. Now what?
I just can't do another.
Here we go again, baby.
Yeah. Like, the next year, that's a Dolphin thing to do is, we got our guy next year. I would love for a quarterback controversy. I thought you were going in that direction where, Ewers is balling. Tua was balling before he got hurt. Now what do we do?
Oh, I'm down for that. That's what I'm basically.
Like
that's what I mean. Basically,
to have, like we're 10-3.
And what do you do with McDaniel now? Because he got his guy. So now what do you say to McDaniel? That's what I basically. Yeah, you're onto it. That's what I meant.
Like if Ewers gets hurt, Tua gets hurt, Ewers comes in.
Yeah.
Balls, right? Say like week 8, Tua gets hurt. We're sitting there at 5-3. Ewers comes in. He gets us to another. We end the season at 11-6.
Yeah.
Win our first playoff game with Ewers. Keep him. We got our quarterback of the future. I'm happy with that. And we're paying him pennies. And then you move on from Tua. Like, people forget that me and you are Dolphin fans. We like Tua. We defend him from bad takes. We see promise in him. But don't get it wrong. If the situation arises where we have an upgrade, we will move on very easily because we want to win. But it'd be nice to have that quarterback controversy. Yeah. Some people might even say trade Ewers. Get something for him, back.
And then move up and get a blue chipper at the top of the first, right? Was there anything about Quinn? I think the only thing that I saw about Quinn Ewers was he tried to make like a corner route throw to that really fast Baldwin kid, and Colbert made a play on it. Other than that, I didn't really see much on. We know yesterday it was either Ewers or Zach Wilson that got picked up by Isaiah Johnson.
Yeah.
I've seen people say that it was Ewers. I've seen people say it was Wilson. Either way, that ball was wobbling. Let them know what you got coming up, Doug.
So we got OTAs tomorrow. I don't know if the media will be there. Hopefully. And outside of that, you know, we got OTAs for the next week, give or take. And then we have mandatory minicamp. We got nothing. So I got a series going that I do every year, camp battles.
Mm.
And then I don't know. I'll figure something. We got to entertain the masses for a month, so we'll do it.
Yeah. Great. Make sure. Hey, bro, I don't even got to say it. Y'all already subbed. We already know what time it is. But if you aren't, go over. Give Doug a sub. Give Diebar a sub. Give Ryder McConville a sub. Give a lot of the great content creators out there that got you covered for the Miami Dolphins. Go give them a sub because they all do great work. All right, guys. I will be live tomorrow on 5 p.m. with Neil. We'll discuss day 3 of OTAs. And then we will go on from there, all right? Smash the like button. Subscribe if you're new. As always, fins up all day, every day. And we will see you on the next one. Shout out to all of you in the chat. Make sure you smash that like button.